Hey guys, this video is just to catch everybody up and have pretty much just everything recorded so that you guys can review the notes from the most recent week or so uh, going into finals. So I just wanted to do a quick recap on a quick history of the Persians. I'm going to move relatively quickly through this. So if you have any questions, make sure you reach out. So the guy you're looking at here is a guy by the name of Cyrus. His name, sometimes he's referred to as Cyrus the Great. He's found in the Bible a number of times. At least he's mentioned in the Bible a number of times. And basically, he's the first Persian to really expand the territories by conquering land outside of the traditional Persian homeland, which is like South Iran, right near the Persian Gulf, appropriately named. So he eventually moves and conquers all of Anatolia. Later, he gets all of Mesopotamia, and his son Cambyses conquers Egypt. So basically, if you're paying attention, within one generation of Persian leaders, they conquered, the land of the Hittites, the land of the Mesopotamians, and the Egyptian civilization. That's pretty much all the main civilizations we talked about, at least for the first half of the year or so. And one of the things that they realized is once they had this really large empire, is it's really hard to maintain it, right? Empires are easy to get, or are easier to get than they are to maintain. So the Persians had to create new ways of organizing their empire in a way that made it more easy for them to control. So they did that in a number of ways. So first, they set up basically provinces. They divided the empire into 20 different areas, each with its own local ruler. So if you want to think of it like states in the United States, right? That's pretty much how they divided up the land. And the person who was in charge of that was called a satrap, right? So these were actually called satrapies, is the name for the province in Persian. And one of the things that's wrong about the movie 300, one of the things that it's important to point out historically, is that the Persians were really known for their toleration. They did not force their beliefs on others. They had this kind of weird new religion called Zoroastrianism. It was monotheistic, but they didn't push that on anybody. They basically said, if you pay your taxes and provide the Persian Empire with troops when needed, then you can pretty much keep doing everything you've done before. In fact, a lot of times they left the local rulers in charge and just basically, made them a little bit subservient to the Persian ruler. But ultimately that they would have full reign to do things as they saw fit within their own, area. So when they conquered Egypt, they kept the pharaoh there. And the pharaoh basically was still in charge, and the Egyptians saw the pharaoh as the one in charge, but the pharaoh basically reported to the Persian king, who was often called the King of Kings, right? That language we see in the Bible. But that was really started under the Persian Empire. So this idea that they would force their beliefs and all this stuff on others, that's not true at all. They were very, very tolerant. They also created a huge bureaucracy, tax collectors, record keepers, basically people to standardize the way things worked within it, including things like coins, making money that can be used throughout the entire empire instead of having all these different regional currencies, right? No, here's the coins that we use throughout the empire. It keeps things more cohesive. Predictable taxes, right? People wanted to know how much they would have to pay so that way they could prepare for that. In the ancient world, a lot of times taxes would go up and down willy-nilly. So having predictable taxes made people less likely to resent the government. Yeah, nobody likes paying taxes, but you really don't like it if one year you pay $50 in tax and the next year you pay $5,000 in tax, and then the next year you pay $800 in tax. You're like, what? I don't understand why I'm paying these things. And then the last thing that they did is they realized the importance of roads and communication. So they developed a system of roads that ultimately created what's called the Royal Road. It connected the capital of Persia, Persepolis. Notice that that's a Greek word, right? Persepolis. So they couldn't have been so bad if they're borrowing some of the language and the terminology from their rivals. But it basically went from Persepolis, which is down close to the Persian Gulf, and went all the way really to the Aegean Sea. So that's a really long way, and I have a map here in a second. And you could travel this in a week at the height of the Persian Empire, which doesn't sound like that takes a long time, considering that I can send a text right now and it'll show up in India in 4 seconds. But the fact that you could get information from one end of the empire to the other in a relatively quick way, that rate of speed is unheard of in the ancient world. Remember, they're on horses, right? Horses need sleep and they need to eat and they need to rest. And so basically, what they did was they set up stables along the way that you could essentially trade out one horse, get another one, and keep going, so that you always had a fresh horse. And then when you got tired, there were other couriers who would take your message and keep going. So that's how you could get from one end to the other in the short time of a week. And another thing that I like about this map is it shows you the expansion. So in 557 BC, they're really just this tiny little area above the Persian Gulf. And 60 years later, they're this huge land, right? They have all this territory from the Indus River to basically encroaching on Athens and Sparta, all of Egypt, all of Mesopotamia and Syria, right? This is just remarkable that they had such a large empire in such a short amount of time. So that's the Persian Empire. They're leading up to their war with the Greeks, which we'll call the Persian Wars. So that's really where this would stop. And then I think there are other videos that talk about the hoplites and the Persian Wars and stuff that have been recorded previously. So if you guys have any questions, please reach out and let me know. And I'll see you next time I see you.